We had actually requested smoke and music for us to enter. Kyle really likes to make an entrance. So I noticed the podium standing over there. I just share a quick story. Kyle and I have been doing speaking going on 10 years now as well. And when we first started, Kyle asked if I would join him, which I was very excited because triathletes love to talk about themselves. And if I could have that opportunity, then I was all in. But I'd never done any public speaking. And so all the early speeches, I always made sure there was a podium so I could stand behind it where my legs would shake. And nobody could see that I was shaking in my boots as my confident brother stood up there doing his talk. But we started to figure it out, and we've actually figured out, what's that? Excuse me. As he sat in his chair, excuse me. But we've really figured it out, including just being able to sit next to each other because we really share the stage, we share what we do together. And that's really what the Kyle Pease Foundation is all about. It's about inclusion. And the story that we've been sharing a lot recently that I'd just like to start with you all was really how I started to notice what inclusion was supposed to look like. And when we were kids growing up, the house that we started in had 2 steps to get down to the living room. And so that meant somebody had to carry Kyle in there or carry his chair in there so that he could sit in the living room and do whatever we were going to do that morning. But usually when we had a party or a gathering or some people were at our house and all the kids went bounding up the stairs and out into the backyard, Kyle was still left sitting in the living room. And he had to wait for somebody to come pick him up and take him out there. And just for me, as a young kid, that was it was a heartbreaking experience, and I just wanted to figure out how do we include people, and I watched my parents quickly come into the room and pick Kyle up and take him outside so he could play with the other kids. And as I got bigger and older, I started to do the same thing for Kyle. And that was really the beginnings of what we do. Usually what we did in that room, though, was we watched SportsCenter, and we would sit there for hours, pre-internet, of course, and we would watch SportsCenter over and over until we had it all memorized and we could repeat the lines, and then we'd run in the backyard and reenact it. And that was the start of Kyle's sports career. And so we started finding things that he could compete in, baseball, soccer, but whatever we did, Kyle had to call it wheelchair baseball or wheelchair soccer. In those days you attached the disability to whatever it was that you were doing. And if people in wheelchairs were playing baseball, then it was going to be called wheelchair baseball. But we wanted more. Kyle was watching sports all the time. He knew how to play baseball. He knew how to play basketball. He just couldn't physically do it exactly like everybody else. But it was just really about being included. And that's a lot of what we're going to share today was how we started to figure that out. And as we got older, we started to learn that this endurance sports community that Greg shared, Mickey shared, that we're part of, it is very inclusive. And what Kyle goes through is the same thing that anybody goes through. And particularly what Kyle and I like to do is Ironman triathlons. And for those that aren't fully aware, it's a 2.4 mile swim, in which Kyle sits in a boat that we tie to my waist and I pull him through the water. A 112 mile bike, which takes about 365 pounds of human and steel together on a 3-wheel contraption. And then a 26.2 mile marathon where I push Kyle on a specially designed racing chair. And for 140.6 miles, Kyle and I share the course. And for 140.6 miles, I have to carry another human being. And that can be really challenging at times. But for 140.6 miles, Kyle has to be the most positive force on that race course that day. Every time I try to quit, every time I tell him it's too hard, he has to look back and tell me that I can go just a little bit further. So as we go through this today, as we think about it, think of the different ways that you guys are seeing inclusion. A lot of you are already living it, you're doing it. You're incredibly inclusive with your vests. I love that. It's really well done. But what we're doing at the Kyle Pease Foundation is we're finding ways for people with disabilities to be included in life and to live it out and do exactly what everybody else was doing. So with that, I'll hand it over to Kyle, and we'd like to just share a few stories and tell you a little bit more about what we do here at the Kyle Pease Foundation.
This journey started in 2010 when Brent did his first Ironman in Louisville, Kentucky. And he invited the whole family to come up. And what was cool about that was really my first trip as an adult. So I got to book my own hotel room, I got to party and hang out late, But when Brent invited me to come, I had no idea what an Ironman triathlon was. So what do you do when you don't know what something is? You Google it. And so I Googled it, and I forgot the word triathlon. So I get to Google Ironman, and the movie came up. And Brent is one of my best friends. I love him, but one thing about it, he's not a very good actor. So then I put a triathlon, and then I was amazed. I was enthralled by the process. I was enthralled at how inclusive this sport was. And it was my opportunity to live out a dream of becoming an athlete. And to do it with my brother was something so special. So that day, the whole idea, it was, people kept peppering me with, questions about, hey, like, maybe one day you could do this. So like, yeah, like, no way I'm doing this. But then, after I saw what Brent did, and what all the other athletes did that day, where they crawled, and they found a way, even when they couldn't go anymore. That's what I do every day of my life. I am dependent on somebody to do everything for me, from helping me eat to wiping my butt. So everything in between. And so it's hard. It's challenging. But we all have our challenges. Mine will get more noticeable than others. But back to 2010, after Brent completed his day, 12 hours, 23 minutes, and 42 seconds. And yes, those 42 seconds do count. And after that, we had a team dinner, because Brent was doing it with a lot of his friends that day. And me and Brent had a couple minutes, just the two of us. And I started asking him questions. How did it feel? Were you tired? And Brent was giving me very short responses. And I kind of felt like a network anchor. Like you just want to dive in and pull out all the information you can. But that wasn't the case. It was like, yes, I'm tired. Like, well, I need more. So the last question that I asked is really how our inclusive journey started. And that is, can people in wheelchairs do Ironmans? I believe we can.
So why does what we do matter to you guys? It's really just, it matters what you take from it and how you share that. Inclusion is, for us, it goes back to that living room. It goes back to not leaving Kyle sitting at the bottom of 2 steps, waiting to see if somebody will come play with him. Seeing if somebody will just be a part of it. For 15 years, Kyle's worked at Publix grocery stores. And that's a wonderful experience for me as a job. He gets paid for that job. Some folks in this room even recognize Kyle without his green vest. But Kyle didn't want to be a greeter at a grocery store for his entire working career. And at the Pease Foundation, we've included employees like Kyle in our workforce. So we actually have 4 employees with disabilities that are doing meaningful work for us. They're typing with their eyes, they're using one finger, they're doing things though that we need, and it's meaningful work. So what started in a living room, what carried itself onto a triathlon course, that's what inclusion is for us. And so what is that for you? But Kyle and I, of course, now we've found a way that we could include each other and that we could be athletes. And so we went through years of trying different things and learning how to do triathlons. We did 5Ks and 10Ks and marathons. We did everything we could do, because now all of a sudden we were playing sports together. Because when Kyle played wheelchair baseball, I stood on the other side of the fence and watched. And when I played baseball, Kyle sat in his chair. I got that right? Thank you.
You did.
He sat on the other side of the fence and watched. But we never got to get on the field together at the same time. And when we do an Ironman, we both do. And in 2013, when we did our very first Ironman together, we knew about all these very specific cutoffs. We were in Madison, Wisconsin. And in an Ironman, you have 2 hours and 20 minutes to finish the swim. You've got 10 and a half hours to finish the swim and the bike, and you've got 17 hours to do the whole day. Got to finish by midnight or you're not there. And so as we think about inclusion, I knew exactly what would happen if we missed that bike cutoff, if we missed the midnight cutoff. Kyle would look at me and say, nice try, but we got to come back again and do it again later. And that was this thing that we fixated on for a lot of years. We were also fixated on the Ironman in Hawaii. It's the Ironman World Championships. It's a lot like the Masters. It has that kind of feel, that pull that everybody, even the casual observers, tune in to watch. So as we were going through Wisconsin, as we were going through these experiences together, we were trying to learn, how can we go to that island together? How can we compete in our own Super Bowl? And in Madison, Wisconsin, at that very first one, it was a brutal bike course. It was so hard. Over and over, Kyle and I are trying to push each other. Kyle's chanting at me, I think you can, I think you can. We're going up these hills, going 3 miles an hour. It's taking us all day. Brutal, dripping sweat on each other, screaming at each other. And as we're finishing that bike ride that day, you have to climb up a 4-story parking deck, which you can imagine what that feels like after 9 hours of biking. And as I'm coming across where the finish area is for the bike, I see all the volunteers and they're kind of dropping their heads, and Kyle and I are in a panic. We've missed the bike cutoff. We're not going to be Ironman today. And all of a sudden they kind of start this slow golf clap. And they look at us and they say, you guys made it by 2 minutes. If we'd missed it by 2 minutes, we weren't going to get to run. And that's the beauty of these endurance sports, that there are no special rules. It does not matter who you are. You have to go do it. The employees that work for our foundation, they have a job to do that they need to do. And if they're not doing it, I usually just have Greg call them and let him handle it. But that's so important to us, that we just want to be included. And we did finish that day. We became Ironman, and as Kyle likes to make fun of me for being so tired, at the end of that race, we all got separated from Kyle's wheelchair and everything we needed. It was late. We were all exhausted. And so we just laid the seats down of the rental SUV we had, and we put Kyle in the back of the car. And before we could close the hatch, he was already asleep. So he couldn't even answer my questions. But then for the next 4 years, we tried to get into the race in Hawaii. And it was just a series of no, And really it felt like just sitting in the living room waiting to see if somebody would come pick us up and let us play on the field with everybody else. And we tried everything. Phone calls, letter campaigns, social media, anything we could do. None of it worked. It was getting to the point where we just felt like maybe it wasn't going to happen. And in 2018, we went to do a half Ironman together. We just wanted to go have fun. We were thinking, Hawaii's never going to happen. Let's just focus on this organization. Let's focus on our relationship and the things that we enjoy together. And in Raleigh, North Carolina, as we were finishing up this 70.3 half Ironman day, dripping sweat in the middle of June, the announcers all crowd around us at the finish line. They start taking pictures and they jump on the microphone and they say, guys, as you know, it's the 40th anniversary of Ironman World Championships, and we want you to inspire us for the next 40 years. You're going to Kona. And all of a sudden, we felt lifted up those stairs. All of a sudden, all of the struggles were worth it. We all go through those things. We go through things personally, professionally, all the time. We deal with adversity. It's part of life. We can see right now the adversity Kyle deals with. We strap his left arm down to his chair so it doesn't fly around all day. We strap his feet to the chair. We Velcro his phone on, and we tell him to go get on the train and get out of our way. But that's what it was. None of that mattered anymore because it was all worth it in the end. And we were going to get to go compete in the Ironman World Championships alongside everybody.
So you're probably thinking we're crazy, and we are. And you're probably thinking, well, what can we do? What can we do as a company? What can we do as an individual to be more inclusive? I think what you guys have already done is amazing. But you don't have to look at it as a big thing. Opening a door for me and our employees at the Pease Foundation makes the biggest make the biggest difference in our day. For example, this morning, I got on the train at Lindbergh. It was one stop to the art center, and then I wheeled up, excuse me, I wheeled up to the office. And I had to wait at the door until the security guard saw me. And Maggie, that security guard, wasn't there. I could have called Brent, I could have called Greg, Mickey, Allison, I could have called anybody. And I would have done that. But Megan and my cell phone wasn't there. What would I have done? So the simplest thing of opening a door made the biggest difference. And that is what Iron Man had done for me. It has opened the doors to see my possible, to see that I matter, to see that my story is a part of Iron Man's story. So just think about that when you're down, or when you have a challenging project at work. Think about the ways that you can open the door. Think about the ways that you could be there for your wife, for your husband, for your kids, for your coworkers. And believe that the smallest thing of opening a door could change the impact of somebody that you love or somebody that you care about. And that's what Brent has done for me by allowing me to see what I can do rather than what I can't do. Because so many times people have said no. So many times people have said I can't. And if you don't get anything away from this conversation, find a way to say yes. Because that's what we do with the Pease Foundation. That's what we do through endurance sports, is to show what we can do rather than what we can't do. And Hawaii was the perfect illustration of that. For that time that we got notified that we were going to Hawaii was 17 weeks. And if you think about it, 17 weeks is not a lot of time to ship all of our equipment, to get 70 plus individuals over to the island, to set up my care, to everything, to train. It probably trained 30 to 35 hours a week. And I come in about 10 to 12 weeks out on a weekend and spend about 20 hours with him. But that's what we wanted. That's what we sacrificed for 8 years of hearing no. We found a way to say yes.
I love doing this with Kyle, and this has been a fun week for us. This is actually the third talk we've been able to do this week, and the first talk I do 20 to 25 hours a week of training, and now I'm up to 30 to 35. So I really do appreciate how big the legend grows the more we do this together. But it's actually one of the best parts that we get to just experience this together. And Hawaii was this thing that really we realized once we were on the island. It was something that we've really coveted our whole lives. Because now we were on this big stage. The Ironman in Hawaii is 2,500 of the fittest people on the planet. Less than 1% of people who attempt an Ironman triathlon can even get into that race. And here we were alongside all of these competitors, alongside 100 professional triathletes. And Kyle and I had to go through the exact same thing as them on the exact same day. There's ways to get on to Augusta National. There's ways to play that golf course. And if you have it, please come see me afterwards. I'd like to go. But you can't play with them in April. We can all do the things that we see these other athletes do. Kyle was going to get to compete with all of these athletes. And we've never experienced anything like this. At the start of the race, was so intense, you know, I couldn't swallow. I could just feel everything tightening up. I look over at Kyle and he's got like laser eyes. He is so ready to compete. As we've done this over the years, we've actually learned Kyle was really the most competitive athlete in our house. He wants to beat everybody. He wanted to beat 100 professional triathletes. And I realized we've just got to get away from all this chaos. So I start taking Kyle down with our volunteers down to the water, and you go down a set of stairs at a place called Dig Me Beach, and a wave kind of crashes against the seawall and it splashes all over Kyle. So before anybody can say anything, I grab the rope and we tug Kyle into the water and I just swim out to where it's calm. And all of a sudden it's quiet. This 17-week journey that we've been on, the intensity of the morning, just feeling like we were in the World Championships. And all of a sudden, it all comes over me. Really, everything. You know, the living room, the lifetime, the brothers, the bond that we share. And I looked up at Kyle, and I said, you know, Kyle, being your brother has been one of the greatest joys of my life. And I promise you today, no matter what happens, I'll give you every ounce of my energy. And all I ask is that you do the same. And tears are starting to come out of my goggles. And I look at Kyle, and I can see the daggers again. And he goes, you got it, bud. And the cannon fires, and Kyle and I felt like we were shot out of a cannon. We take off. The average Ironman swim in Hawaii is about 75 to 80 minutes. And as we come out of the water, I look down at my watch. We've been gliding on top of the water. I can hear Kyle screaming, barking at me the whole way. And I look down, and we've done the swim in 67 minutes. And I look back at Kyle, and I go, holy fucking shit, we did it. And Kyle goes, we've got a bike ride, go. So there we are, 112 miles through the island of Hawaii together.
I remember where we were, before we got in the water, Greg always had a way of being at the event that we need him to be at. And you may not know this about Greg, but Greg had a very calming experience when you're at a race with him. I don't know if you get that part of Greg, but I do when we're at a race. And I love it because Greg finds a way that in the middle of the chaos, Greg found a way to put me at peace when we're ready for an event. So who are those people in your life? Who is your Greg? Who, in the middle of this chaos, can pull you down to earth and put your hand on your back and say, you're good. You got this. You've been waiting for this your whole life. And the whole time that we were getting ready to go out on the bike, that's what I thought about. Just knowing that there was going to be ups and downs. The bike for us is our greatest equalizer. Me plus Brent plus bike is about 350 pounds. That's a lot. And as you can see in my everyday wheelchair that I'm in, it is contoured to me. So I'm comfortable in here. But you put me in a bike, not comfortable at all. Within the first mile, I started cramping. My legs especially started cramping. But I knew that I had to be there for Brent, and I had to show myself that mind over matter was the number one point for me. That I couldn't worry about the pain. I just had to be present in the moment and focus on that calming experience that Greg gave to me. So as we were riding, we enjoyed the first 20 miles, going 20 miles per hour, It was great, it was flat. But then you start making a 19-mile climb up to a small town. And Brent said, I'm one of the most competitive athletes that he knows. So I started looking at our computer, because I'm a geek right there. I like to see how fast we're going and what miles we're at so I can count down how many more we have till I get off the bike. But I saw our speed begin to drop from 20 to 10 to 8 to 5 to 3. And I could tell by Brent's demeanor that he was struggling. So the whole time, I remembered the little achy that could. It was my favorite book growing up. And I started to say, I think I can, I think we can, I think you can. For about 17 miles, going 3 miles per hour, took us about 2 hours and 45 minutes to get up this hill. But the whole time, I was there for Brent, and Brent was there for me. And Megan and Brent decided to take a couple minutes off. And Megan, if I wasn't there to be the positive force behind what we were doing. So when we get to the top, we see some of our supporters, and they noticed that my left sock was full of blood because my ankle was scraping on the side of the footrest. And that it stopped me because we had one goal, and that was to get to the cutoff, that 10.5-hour cutoff. So what goes up must come down. And the whole time, Brent was looking at the veranda, the Pacific Ocean, and it was very beautiful. And Brent made a comment about the ocean. And I said again, Bud, you gotta focus. You gotta get us down, and you gotta get us to that cutoff. And we made the cutoff, our fastest bike ever, by 51 minutes. And then again, I said, holy fucking shit, we made the cutoff. And so then we had a twisted 14 marathon.
So this is just our story, and we, of course, loved the opportunity to just share it, because it's something that we've worked so hard for. And for 4 hours and 45 minutes, we ran across the island of Hawaii, all the way out to a place called the Energy Lab, which gave us absolutely no energy, where it started to rain. And we had forgotten a pad on Kyle's shoulder, and so it was starting to really hurt him. And I've raced with Kyle for a long time now, and never once have I ever heard him talk about stopping. And on that day, in that moment, in the Energy Lab, we were just both really starting to struggle. And I just looked at him, I said, Kyle, we have to figure this out. We are finishing this race. We've been striving for this race for the last 8 years, for our entire lives. And we just couldn't get our heads around running for another 2.5 hours. And Kyle saw this traffic cone about 5 feet away, and he said, just run me to that traffic cone. I said, okay. So I ran 5 feet. He said, good job. Run me to the next one. Another 5 feet. We'd been racing at this point for more than 12 hours in the heat and the wind and all the conditions that the islands offer. And the only thing we could get our heads around was 5 feet in front of us. You know, we've all been there in those situations, whatever they are, whatever that demanding challenge is in front of you. And we start thinking about 26.2 miles, and it's impossible. It's an impossible task. But we just needed to go 5 feet. You know, and that's what Kyle does every single day. You know, just thinking about where to go, how to get there. Our warehouse for the foundation is up in Alpharetta. It takes Kyle 2.5 hours to get there. He could ask for a ride. He could skip the whole 2 bus and train routine. But for him, that's the 5 feet at a time. Just keep figuring it out so you can be independent, so you can find that finish line. And after 4 hours and 45 minutes, we start coming down Ali'i Drive, this famous road in Hawaii that leads you to the finish. And we hear the announcer's voice as we come flying up the ramp. And he screams out, "Kyle Pease, you are an Ironman." And I reach down and grab Kyle's face, and I start jumping up and down. And I realize I'm hanging on to an Ironman world champion athlete. And I realize that for 14 hours and 29 minutes, I've been witness to one of the greatest athletic achievements that I've ever watched. The last 2 world champions from Atlanta, everybody, the Atlanta Braves, Kyle Pease. But it was more than that for both of us. You know, when we started racing in 2011, we instantly felt that inclusive experience that we were both sharing. And so Kyle looked at me and he said, "We have to have other people do this." And that started the Kyle Pease Foundation with a mission to improve the lives of people with disabilities through sports. And that was what we set out to do. We just felt like we could include people in sports. And that's what we did for a long time. We met families, we met Greg, we met all these individuals with disabilities that were out there that were just looking for ways to be included, to get out of that living room, to do what everybody else was doing. And as it grew, these athletes started having these experiences. We had a young man named Justin Knight compete in an Ironman in 2015, and he finished. And Kyle and I thought, you know, we've done Ironmans, he's going to want to do another one just like us. And instead of telling us about his next Ironman, instead of telling us about doing the New York Marathon or some other iconic race, he looked at us and he said, "I want a job." And all of a sudden it clicked for us. You know, here we were just including people in sports, but think of those team experiences you've had, especially the ones you had growing up, just teaching you and giving you confidence, showing you how to work with a group. All of those skills that we learned, Justin and Kyle didn't necessarily get them that way. And so instead of saying, "I want another Ironman," he said, "I want a job." And that started what has shown us how we can really move athletes beyond the finish, how they can do so much more and how they can truly be included. Justin Knight is our customer service rep effectively for the foundation. He processes 3,000 tax letters a year. He reaches out to individuals volunteering, wishes them happy birthday, makes sure they know where to be, what time to be there. He calls them, sends them messages on social media. He's interfacing with our customers, our donors, and he's making a difference. He's making an impact. Imagine what that feels like to be on the other end, to get a video message from Justin Knight thanking you for your donation. But imagine what it feels like for Justin to sit there and do that, to not greet you as you walk into the grocery store, but to make you feel included just like you're making him feel included. So all these experiences that Kyle and I have been able to share are truly incredible. You know, we're at an age where families aren't always together, and Kyle and I are together almost every day. And when we race, 14 and a half hours of pure brotherly bond, which includes the screaming and shouting at each other at times as well. So as these conversations have grown, it's been a wonderful opportunity for organizations like ours to be a part of it. As we think about diversity, equity, and inclusion, everybody's thinking about it. Our angle is what it feels like to be an individual with a disability and how we include them. We start small, we run in a race together, but we aim big and we move people into this independence of doing more than what meets the eye. If you saw Kyle in Publix, you'd think that's wonderful of Publix, and it certainly is. But if you see him in our office, screaming and shouting at me, then you think about what is truly possible.
I can think that, you know, as we close out our presentation, just think about how you can bring people along with you to open the door and show them what they can do rather than what they can't do. It doesn't have to be a disabled person. It could be a coworker, a friend, somebody that you can reach out to and say, "Come on, let's have lunch. Let me get to know you. Let me get to understand you." And see what their story is and how your story can be involved in their story. So thank you for having us today, Mickey, Allison, Greg, and the rest of the team. Thank you. We're honored to be here. Thanks again.